Hi, welcome to Unique Parenting. I am B Moise, and today we're going to have a conversation about ADHD. ADHD is, I would say, the most popular neurodiverse diagnoses that I have a conversation about. I mean, it is the most diagnosed, but it's just one of those conversations that I have a lot, and I have them with parents all the time. And I see that parents don't really recognize what ADHD can look like and how it can manifest itself in children, and also how certain types of behaviors that ADHDers are exhibiting are not necessarily something that they can control or even something that they're aware of. I mean, one of the most fascinating things with ADHD is the amount of adults that have ADD and are not even aware that they have ADD. I think sometimes later on in life they can say, I think I have this, but it doesn't look like that. And usually with ADHD, especially with the hyperactive kind where the child is bouncing and moving around all the time, adults really can't understand that because adults aren't bouncing and moving around all the time and sitting on their head and doing all these little interesting things. But as an adult with ADD, it looks different where, your inability to focus may look like just switching the channel all the time or just kind of constantly moving from one thing to another, or however it may seem. So I like ADHD because I have ADHD, and I learned that I had ADHD later on in life, in grad school, and I wish I knew earlier because it would have helped me understand what I was doing and why I had such a hard time completing a task without putting a lot of mental energy into it. But the way that I learned to cope was I learned to be a perfectionist. So I overdid it. Like I would overdo assignments, I would do things way ahead of time because I know there'd be like a week where I couldn't move or do anything at all, or I just wasn't in the mood. So that's how I cope with it. But when I'm talking to parents with how their children are coping with ADHD, it's hard because a child they have to find a rhythm. They have to figure out what's going to work for them and how they can maintain that. Now, with ADHD, they tend to come with executive dysfunction issues. Now, not all kids with ADHD have executive dysfunction issues, but most kids do. So it's something to be mindful of, forgetting things, not remembering to do tasks, not being able to execute tasks from beginning to end without needing a break or reminder or something like that, or just the inability to task complete, meaning, something that you do all the time every single day, but for some reason this child just can't do it. And that's usually a byproduct of having ADHD with executive dysfunction. So if you have a child with ADHD, just remember that they tend to be incredibly unique and very vibrant in terms of their imaginative ways, out of the box thinkers. So if you have a child with ADHD, learn how to nurture and grow the positive side of ADHD, because if you're constantly talking about how bad it is, then it becomes something that this child doesn't want association with. And if a child does not want association with a particular thing, they're not going to want treatment for it or aid or skills or anything in between. So if you create a positive environment and a positive conversation about, listen, you have ADHD, but here are the wonderful things that comes with it. But here are some things that are not so great. And here are some ways we learn how to, work around it. If you just bring on the negative, the child's not going to want to talk about it. And if a child's not willing to talk about what's going on, it's very difficult, and it's extremely hard for them to work on it and improve it and do something, even though deep down they may want to. But no child wants to be different, because if you have ADHD, it means you're not neurotypical. And if you're not neurotypical, you're not like everybody else. And most kids don't want that. Some children, as they get older, they welcome neurodiversity and they're happy that they're neurodiverse. Adults that have figured out that they're diverse are excited and happy and proud. But as a child, when you're going through a lot of developmental changes, especially just the social norms of what's going on, that's not something you may want to be associated with. So always frame something with the positive. If you discover your child has ADHD after you've had a neuropsych test, and you discover which type, the inattentive or impulsive kind or combined, have a conversation about, hey, you're gifted in this way, and here are all the wonderful strengths and positive things that comes with having a neurodiverse brain. However, here are some other ways that it's going to hinder progress for you, and it's going to slow down some things that you may not be able to do and execute like your neurotypical peers. So remember, when having that conversation, lead with the positive, followed by here are some coping and some skills, and get some executive coaching skills, and realize how to work around those things. There are a lot of ADHD coaches out there that can help kids, and there are, on task coaches out there that can help children maintain, how to stay on task and how to do things when their ADHD symptoms are a struggle and they're struggling with those things. So anyway, I do think the ADHD brain is an absolute brilliant brain. I love that brain, but it is a brain with a lot of challenges because it's neurodiverse. Like all the other conversations that I've had, it's, while I say I love certain things about being neurodiverse, it is a challenge, and you do have to navigate around those challenges, especially when you're parenting and you don't know what to do. So make sure you research and you reach out to whomever can help you, especially following the neuropsych recommendation list that's usually typically listed at the bottom, and find some research to discover how you can empower your child with the brain that they were gifted. So in the meantime, I want you all to enjoy your unique parenting journey with your unique child.